Hi, this is Adam with the Learn Invest Grow Show. I'm super excited. We have a special guest on here. We have Joseph, and Joseph is a prolific real estate investor, real estate flipper, and owner of rental properties. And the purpose of this segment is to really focus on real estate investors that are looking to get started into flipping houses. And I feel that Joe is a really great guest to join our show. I'm so thankful for Joe to join our show to give his insight of how he got started and also to talk about like the struggles, because let's face it, at the end of the day, there's always struggles getting started, and then ways that he was able to overcome those struggles, and really just to share knowledge with our investor community. And so, yeah, Joseph, thank you for joining us, and yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much, Adam, for having me here. I'm really excited here to provide value to whoever's watching. Yeah, so my name is Joseph. I run Spartan Capital Investments. I go by another couple of LLCs as well. And mainly a fix and flip investor. We've been doing a ton of fix and flips. We have 4 under contract right now. We had 1 fall out. And really just looking to go extremely aggressive here in 2023 and scale up with my team, a few partners, and so on and so forth. I also run a syndication company, essentially, where we go out and acquire multifamily properties. I have a pretty good deal, actually. I guess I'll just mention it randomly now. It's we're building the lane for 32 million. Since I already mentioned, I'll keep continuing with the lane. Is for 6 million, and we're gonna basically it's gonna be stabilized at 60 million. So that's a project that I'm pretty excited to be a part of with my building partner and a couple of other partners as well. So I'm gearing up to do something in the multifamily space as well, particularly with multifamily, which is what we specialize in. Yeah, so Spartan Capital Investments does fix and flip renovations, and to put it in a more fancy way, we do we rehabilitate and reposition residential properties, if you will, if you want to make it more fancy. But it's fix and flip renovations and multifamily ground up development, as well as multifamily value add. The way of getting started, so I got started in humble beginnings, and a few years ago. It's actually my first fix and flip was in 2018, and partnered up with a family member. Essentially, was completely broke, straight out of college. I graduated my double major in physics and mathematics, and I said, okay, what now? I knew I wanted some freedom, and I knew having a W-2 job wouldn't provide me with a lot of freedom. I wanted to be able to travel whenever I want. I wanted to be able to say, live in Miami like I am now. And I wanted to have some type of time freedom for a whole host of reasons. And, starting a business seemed like a really risky thing to do, like starting a tech company. Is had some tech background, built a small app and things like that. A bunch of software experience, but I said that would be a little bit too risky. So I was looking for other ideas, and then all businesses require a significant amount of capital, which I didn't have. Right? I was already in a bunch of credit card debt. So we're watching AGTV shows for quite a while, and I'm seeing this guy making like 60 grand, and I'm like, okay, you telling me I can? And they know what profit they're going to make from the get-go, because they calculate the after repair value and things like that, and they get contractor bids on. I'm like, okay, so here's a business I can start where I know all the risks ahead of time, more or less. I know how much I'm going to make, more or less, and there seems to be an opportunity to go and do it with just being completely dead broke versus like starting a big company. So did my first fix and flip, and it was, I would say it was somewhat smooth, but at the time I thought it was just a disaster because the project took 4 months. I thought it was a disaster for 4 months. I was really upset at the time.
It happens to all of us. I mean, you're
Yeah.
always gonna have a timeline, a budget, and you're always gonna go over. It's just an end.
Yeah. So that one I anticipated like 1 month, but it was a big project. You know, we got roofing, we got an oil tank, so it took 4 months, which is actually ended up being a pretty good timeline for the project. And that one went pretty good. My partner at the time decided that they wanted to rent out the property. So it wasn't actually a full fix and flip, but we ended up selling it later. Got into my second property. I was still, broke, right? So partnered up with someone else. And basically just did my second fix and flip. And that one was, a bit better, right? And then, actually, that one was a little bit of a struggle too. And then my third property, I was like, okay, I'm not too happy about the first and second contractors. So let me start my own construction company. So I ended up starting my own construction company, and then started basically doing a bunch of fix and flips in a couple of months, give or take, for most of them. Just hiring out straight day labor crews, and got my license and had a lot of fun from there.
You got your license and as a contractor.
As a contractor in New Jersey, yeah.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, it's smart. Then basically you hire your own labor crew and sub out, for
For some
plumbing, electrical, and you hire your subs, but you have your labor that you keep them busy for every project.
Yeah, essentially. So we had plumbing, electrical we would do, and things like that. I even did a whole heating system by myself at one point. I don't do that anymore.
Oh yeah, that's
So I got very hands on myself, because I had my crew that knew some electrical and plumbing. And then obviously, if later on we ended up getting some subs for projects that needed some work with permits and things like that too.
sure.
So, but yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun, and I liked learning. So I would just go read a couple of plumbing books, a couple of these books, watch YouTube videos. So it was a bit fun. And then I just did whatever it takes, basically, to just make sure that I do as many fix and flips as possible, and I have control over the time aspect and then the money aspect, so I don't get screwed over by a contract or anything.
So I think the question is like, okay, so if there's a new investor wants to get started, yeah, they're getting they're watching HGTV, and they're getting all this, this is easy. Wow, I can make this kind of money really fast. But let's face it, there's no such thing as nothing's easy. Especially flipping a house is not easy, or it's not a get rich quick scheme. But the question is like, now finding a deal, right? Now this is always one of the hardest things to do. Tell us how you found your first deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of the hardest things to do. And my first deal took like 4 months, right? So just to find a good deal to fix and flip. So if you think you could just go up and just quit your job tomorrow and then just get a deal, it's not that easy. So yeah, you bring up some really good points. There's a lot of challenges, and it definitely took me way longer than what I expected. Also, the market was really hot the time that I really got into it.
What year was this again?
So I got into my first fix and flip in 2018.
Okay.
Was doing it on the side while I had a job at that time. And then I did my second one in 2019.
Okay.
And throughout that time, the market was just like crazy hot. So I knew that I wanted to grab a deal that I knew I was going to make money on. So especially if it's your first deal, you don't want to grab a deal and then and then it just ends up being a complete bust. So yeah, that first deal that we got ended up being, so we got it for like 60,000. So imagine, you can't get properties for 60,000 nowadays. So we got it at 60,000.
How'd you find it? Was it like a wholesaler, realtor, direct to owner?
Yes, that one's been completely from the MLS. So basically,
MLS.
And I say MLS, I just mean on market. So we're looking through Redfin,
Sure.
looking through Zillow, and I had basically an agent go and put offers for me and things like that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and you want to step, like, how did you underwrite the deal? Because there's always like investors need to know like the proper way to underwrite it in terms of
So
the 65 or 70% rule, right? When you're looking at
yeah, so that's a great question. So initially I took like maybe 4 months or so just to educate myself. I went through all the bigger pocket forums, read
Sure.
like ad nauseum, went through a ton of YouTube videos, and then I just made my own little Excel sheet just from everything that I learned. about all the numbers. I made some assumptions. Here's what I'm going to rehab the property for. Here's what I think the closing costs are going to be. I asked the agent, hey, what do you think the closing costs will be? I looked it up on Bigger Pockets and Google. They call me Joe Google a couple of times. I Google everything.
Sure.
So that first deal, I ended up just making my own little Excel sheet and then coming up with a fairly close valuation. So a lot of people, the biggest mistake, and it's a good question, because the biggest mistake that people get into is because they say, hey, look, I have this property, I'm going to buy at 300,000. I'm going to put 20,000, right? 20,000, as they say, ends up being 50,000. I'm going to put 20,000 and I'm going to sell at 350,000 or 370,000. Oh, wow, I'm going to make 30 to 50,000 profit. And they're like, no, you're going to lose 50,000. Because the closing costs and the hard money costs and all the other costs associated with the transaction is just astronaut. It's really, really high. So people have no idea. So one good way to value properties is just using the 75% rule, right? So what's the 75% rule? You're taking 75% of what you think the after repair value is, right? Which you get from looking at like properties. What's like properties? So you want to have an apple-to-apple comparison. You want to see properties that are renovated, right? Similar bedroom, bathroom count, similar square feet, plus or minus 20% max, right? You want to account for the driveway. You want to account for a whole host of things. Make sure they're like properties. You get the after repair value, right? Multiply that by 75%. So let's say it's $1 million property. Multiply by 75%, you get 750,000, and then you're going to subtract the repair. So let's say it's 100,000. So you take that 750,000, subtract away 100,000. So your maximum allowable offer is 650,000, right? And then that's just a beginning. That's a good starting point, but it doesn't hurt to put on an Excel sheet and really model out all the closing costs and things of that sort.
Sure. Now, in terms of now the let's say it fits your metrics. Okay, you have a pass or fail. I don't know how your sales sheet shows, but basically it passes, right? The screen, it passes. Now, what are the next steps? How do you put the property in the contract? How do you put deposit dollars down? Do you have a due diligence? Like, is there a time for due diligence? And then until the money goes hard, and then you close, or like, if you want to explain a little bit more about that, like the process of actually putting it on the contract.
Yeah. So there's a lot of steps that go into that, and it takes time. It takes time to go to actually do all the steps. So let's say first step, you're gonna have to put an offer, right? Put an offer. You're gonna go back and forth. Maybe they accept it. Maybe they won't accept it. So let's say they go and they accept your offer, right? Well, this is an on-market property. Your agent is going to draw up the contract. If it's not on market, if it's through a wholesaler, they're going to basically do an assignment agreement. And it's usually on their side, like 99.9% of the time, the wholesaler will come up with the agreement, the assignment agreement. Now, what you want to do is send that to your attorney, make sure everything is good, and then just give it a good sign. If it's not good, then maybe you can negotiate a couple of terms. Your attorney should be able to advise you. And then you want to look at
Actually, sorry, but you mentioned attorney, because that's a great point. Some states don't require attorneys, but why and some people think they don't need an attorney now, but that's a great point, that why you have an attorney.
You don't need an attorney until you do, right?
Yeah,
until you're in the middle of the transaction, there's a whole crazy stuff
yeah,
on top of your head, and then you're all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I really screwed myself over trying to save $1,200.
And there's actually something I learned from experience. There's two things you don't go cheap on: attorneys and accountants, CPAs.
Yes.
Don't go cheap.
Yeah. Either one of them can cost you tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars in some cases.
Sure.
So yeah, fully agreed. So yeah, and then there's a whole host of things that you have to take into account. So one, is an oil tank, yes or no? Do they have an oil tank report to show that there is none if they claim, right? If whatever it is, if they don't have it, right, then you're going to do your own oil tank sweep. So that's assuming you have it under contract, right? You're in a attorney review. You're going to do your oil tank sweep. Make sure they're not hiding one under the basement, right, or under a car in the driveway. There's a lot of crazy things that can happen. Just to be on the safe side.
Sorry to cut you off too. Another thing is, from my experience, there's signs. You can see like a pipe sticking out. Look for pipes. That's one way to look.
Yeah. So definitely when you're browsing through the property, looking through the property, look to see that little pipe with the mushroom cap, and it will tell you. Sometimes there'll be, owners can be unscrupulous, right? They want to sell the property, so they may or may not be aware that the pipe is completely hidden out of sight, and then you just have no idea, right? Then you could look for a fuel line or some kind of what looks like a metal thick wire coming out of the wall somewhere. You'd be like, oh, okay, that looks like it was a fuel line for a oil tank. But they may also hide that, or they may have no knowledge of hiding that. So that's why you really need to get an oil tank scan.
And the reason why I was bringing that up is because typically when you put a property under contract, now you have cost, and to have an oil tank sweep, that costs money. So the way to mitigate costs is you could browse the property and see if you want to take that risk to put it under contract to start spending money, because a lot of times you spending money and then you back out of the deal and you just spent money, and that can happen over and over again before you know it adds up.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. So always go from the start saying, hey, look, do you have one? Do you not have one? And then that might help you save some of the costs. And then just let them know you're going to run an oil tank sweep. So, I mean, they expect it, especially in the state of New Jersey. So
and that's contingent. And then do you protect yourself to have it like it needs to basically, how do you, like, the contingencies I got in your contract?
Yeah, you want to have some clause in the contract, contingent on oil tank sweep, or just contingent on there being no oil tank, obviously. You also want to have some other things in there. You want structural, environmental is part of the oil tank. That's a big issue they have to be careful of. Why? I guess since I mentioned that, why is it important to do an oil tank sweep? Why is it important? Well, in New Jersey, you could potentially have up to $100,000 cleanup.
You're right. I
heard a horror story where this guy had oil go into the main city water, and he was remediating for 2 years.
Oh yeah.
So that happens. So that's why it's very serious. And I get wholesalers all the time trying to convince me to buy it with the oil tank. I'm like, I'm not doing it.
It can follow you too.
Now, I have deals, right? But I'm better safe than sorry.
It can follow you. I'll give you one story. Sorry to cut you off. My father, for example, he sold the house many moons ago. And basically, then I think the house was sold again, or whatever it was. But then there was contamination later on, and the attorneys like to go after the deep pockets. So my father got a letter in the mail, and basically, my father contacted his attorney, and he's like, "Stu, just pay it off. It's not worth fighting. Just settle it, because you had to cost you more money." So you had to cut a fairly large check just to get rid of it. And this followed them for years. So that's why you think that when you sell a property, you're good. No, it could follow you later on. That's I see that happen to my father. So
yeah,
sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, so for anybody in real estate, it's really important to know all the potential pitfalls, right? Because the most that could happen, when you do good in a property is you make money, but the worst that could happen is a lot worse than the best that could happen, right? Because you're gonna make X amount, right? And you're gonna make X amount, but if you don't know X, Y, Z, you could lose a lot more. So it's important to know these things ahead of time. So once you've done your oil tank sweep, or concurrently you're scheduling your inspection, right? It's most important thing is there's no like big structural issues. Not a lot of people will miss some big structural issue and they may get hurt later. Obviously, like plumbing and electrical issues, a lot of people will miss because they have no idea, but the inspector will catch it. So you want to do your oil tank sweep, do your inspection, and then from then on, it depends on how fast you're looking to move. You can schedule your appraisal at the same time. So it kind of depends on how much time you have, really, if you could afford the time or not. But if you have the time, then you could wait until it's done, and the next step can be the appraisal. Presuming you schedule it at the proper time. So
and another thing too is contractor. Like, how are you? Because when you order an appraisal, let's say it's a renovation project, right? You're going to need a scope of work to go along with that appraisal. So, like, if you want to shine a light on that, how do you figure out your budget? Are you doing it on your own? Do you have a contractor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're new to the real estate investing, you're gonna have zero ideas of what's gonna happen. So get a contractor, and the contractor is gonna get pretty tired of you. You're gonna be looking through a lot of deals. So what I would suggest for you is just developing a good relationship, and initially maybe take a pictures of a few of the properties. If they start getting tired, you'd be like, hey, look, here's just if you can just give me a quick number right off the top of your head. And then if you feel like you're getting it under contract, then it's actually worth their time. Or if you actually get it under contract, then it's worth their time to go and view. Because you can imagine if you're viewing like 20 properties, they're gonna tell you like buzz off.
They're gonna feel you're a tire kicker. So the question is it a free estimate, or are you paying them for their time to? Because they may be more inclined to help you figure out their budget if you're paying them versus trying to use them on 20 deals to finally land your 21st deal. They may get really upset if you're not compensating them. So
Yeah, I mean, you can circumvent that by saying, hey, look, can you give me like off the top, like rough ballpark estimate? Should take you like only 2 minutes. Just take a quick look at these pictures. They'll be fine if that's the case. If you're driving them around to like 20 properties, or they have to go to 20 properties, then you may have to pay them, right? I was able to, I guess when I started, I was able to, maybe because I had some experience watching a ton of AGTV shows and looking up all the prices on Google and things like that. I was able to come up with a rough number, whereas later on I would bring it to a contractor and they'd be like, yeah, it's around there. So I was like somewhat close, and I got to learn a lot about estimating myself from that. So you could also kind of employ that, like do your own research and just kind of gain experience as you go.
And probably a good thing too for a beginner is start off with a small renovation project.
Yes.
Start off small, like a lipstick job, meaning you're maybe doing some floor, some bathrooms, paint, nothing heavy, because that's there's a lot more moving parts to that. And I'm sure you start out small in your first deal, or is it a larger?
My first deal was a little crazy. I mean, I would consider it small, but someone came in the house and vandalized it in the middle of the contract, and then they wouldn't reimburse me for it either.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, the seller wouldn't budge. So they stole the electrical, all the plumbing. So it kind of turned into a bigger job, and the heating systems and things like that.
Oh, that's another risk people don't think of. You have people that you have a lot of in challenging times, or people looking for ways to they have bad habits, or they're going to steal copper. It's value to them.
It happens a lot more than you think, especially in like distressed neighborhoods.
Oh yeah,
and you have to have good security systems, and it's definitely a lot of things to consider, for sure.
This is great. Yeah. So yeah. So what's next now? Now you yeah.
Yeah, so once you do the inspection, you get your contractor quotes, you get your appraisal and all that, then you're pretty much just, good to close from there. There's obviously like one thing I want to say is you want to get a good attorney that's going to be working with you, that's investor friendly. If you get that, then you're off to a good start. And then you want to get a good real estate agent who's experienced with, if they've done a few fix and flips themselves, they're going to be able to be like a gold mine. So the first three real estate agents that I went through to find the perfect one, they've all fixed and flipped a few times at least, or a couple of times. And I actually was able to just siphon a bunch of knowledge from them, right? So one, contractor said, hey, look, you want to put day late fees, $100 per day, and have a contract. And if they say 1 month and they end up taking 4 months, for instance, you're going to get hurt. So how can you circumvent that? Or if they end up taking a year? Well, he said, okay, put $100 late fee every day after a certain amount of time. So if they need a month, give them 2 months, for instance, right? It's up to you however you want to do it. And then you could a couple $100 a day or $100 a day.
Step back. You're basically talking about I'm trying to think of the word, your agreement with your contractor. There's the legal term. I forget what it is. Back when I used to do this, it may be different. That was more commercial stuff, but this agreement that you talk about. So you were able to, how'd you find this agreement to put together with your contractor, and how'd you structure it?
Yeah. In retrospect, I should have just asked the agent to bring me one, but I just basically did a bunch of searching on Google and things like that, and just found something that fit for me. But I would say what you should do is see if your attorney is comfortable with drafting some type of agreement and do it that way. The last thing that you want to do is have a word of mouth agreement with your contractor, because well, there's a few things I'll say. The first, I'm a contractor, right? So I could joke about this. The first
Yeah.
3 letters of contractor is con, C-O-N, right? But also they'll tend to have like bad memory, like 4 months later or 3 months later, or they'll remember what they want to remember that's in their favor. So they'll say, no, I said X, Y, Z. Okay, I mean, it's been 4 months, so you don't even have it in writing. So what are you going to do, right? There's not much you could do. You could argue with them.
They'll walk off the job. They'll leave you, and
they'll leave the job. And the danger, I guess, if I keep giving more tips, is try your best not to do upfront deposits, and just
yes.
And the way you could circumvent that, and you're gonna have to be good with words and argue, like not argue, but convince them to your side, because they're used to doing upfront deposits with almost everyone that they've been dealing with, particularly the retail persons or maybe small retail investors. That's what they're used to. But the person who's in control of the money is in control of the dynamics of the it's really like a relationship, it's a power dynamics, and you want to be in control of that.
That's an excellent point. Yes.
As soon as you don't have leverage over that, you're toast, right? Because, and it's not even like saying that like the contractors are evil. It's just they're going to do what's in their favor. They want to take on multiple jobs, right? And they're going to please you in the beginning, then they want to start pleasing their other clients, because then they've brought on 3, 4, 5 additional clients or whatever the number is, and they want to make them happy too, but they got your money, so you don't have leverage over them, right?
Yeah. So I guess the question is, how do you not let them get ahead of you, so they don't have control over you?
Yeah. Just tell them, hey, look, I mean, especially with general contractors, with some subs, it gets a little bit tricky on smaller jobs. But you could say, hey, look, I'm going to pay for the materials, and I will do as many draws as you possibly need. So we'll put up a draw schedule, we'll put an agreement, and it'll say, let's say, $3,000 for paint, $3,000 for flooring. Be like, I don't care if you get stuck on, you need money after painting, you need $3,000, right? If you need it right away, just tell me. I'll work with you. So that's a way you can get them on your side. And then later on, you can be like, hey, look, do you mind waiting for 2, 3 draws or something like that? If they really came for wait for 2, 3 draws at a time, it's going to be annoying to work with them. But it's better having like, a significant deposit up front, and then they'll just.
And that's what they do. How do you vet your contractor? Because like from my experience, like if you have a financially weak one, those are the ones that are going to try to get more money from you. For some, you want to like, if I'm wrong about this, but you want one that can at least cover it. If they have, they have some liquidity to be able to cover themselves, because that's the problem in New Jersey, is that there's no barrier to entry to become a contractor in New Jersey. That's a huge problem in this state.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bad contractors, and I've heard of horror stories, just like what you said. You give them money, before you know it, they take it, they take off, and that's it. Now you're out 10, 15, 20 grand, and now you're back to square one.
Yeah, I mean that question is just really difficult. It's really difficult to circumvent that, to find the contractor who's going to have good pricing, good timeliness, and on top of that, he has like good, strong financials. So it's kind of a needle in a haystack. I don't know if I have any like perfect advice for that, but what I would reiterate is be in control of the money. So if you do have that contract where they're not like financially strong for whatever reason, you can just fire them right away. And if you have like 6, 7 other bids, now all of a sudden you could replace them, only losing a couple of weeks of time, right?
Yes. And also you want them to be was it bonded and insured, or do you look for that as well?
Yeah. So if you're preferably, you want to verify their license and their insurance, because I've even met like a subcontractor with the license number on his van, fully decked out, professional everything, right? This is a license number on his van, and he ended up not even being licensed.
Really?
Yes, really. So, and this is like a sub for like HVAC. So you want to, if they're claiming they have license insurance, show me, right? Because I've been on a closing, and you know, I had some time for the closing. To be fair, it's only been a week, and he claimed he was licensed, and I just took his word of mouth for the time being. And then I'm like, okay, can you give me a copy of your license? And he's like, oh, blah blah. So if that's the case, they don't. If they start making excuses, they don't have their license. Or if, as soon as you, so here's the thing, as if you ask them for a copy of their license before you ask, instead of asking them if they have a license, they'll be honest.
Yeah, it's true.
If you ask them if they have a license, they may lie.
Of course, I
So
was like, oh yeah, I have it until it's time
until
to
you
find out they don't have it, and
until you need it, yeah,
until you need
absolutely.
it. And then another thing I've heard is references. Do you ever ask for like references as well? Or
Yeah. So what I like to do, and not necessarily all the time, is I'll find, so this is a good tip, find a good like investor who's like very active in the area. And then if they're kind enough, depends on how busy they are, to be frank, they will share a couple of their contractors. If that's the case, if you're lucky, or if you have a good relationship, that's the ultimate reference, because they've worked with them on like a bunch of projects. So the best reference is really just asking other investors, really. So you can go on, one of the Facebook groups and then ask for recommendations. If you get a recommendation, a lot of them are just going to be the actual contractor, but if you get a recommendation, that's a reference. Now, it's a really good point that you brought up. If you want to be on the safe side, ask for 3 references, and then make sure that that's an actual job that they have done, because they can ask their mother or something as put them as a
yeah,
reference. Can you put a good word for me?
so it's a project you completed.
There was a property you completed, walk the process. So like the best thing you could do too is walk another property that's they're actively doing, and then use that as a reference. Be like, I want to talk to this guy. If you can do that for 3 projects, then you're gold. You're really, really golden.
Yeah,
Um, the chances are you may not be able to do that. So again, just be in front of the money, and then you'll be fine. Now, another thing you want to watch out for is the contractor may be over their head, and they might not know, like, they might not have enough experience, and they'll say, hey, look, this project looks good, but then there's a bunch of electrical and plumbing issues and structural issues and things like that. So when you get your inspection report, you want to look and verify yourself that there's major issues, because they can give you like a quote and say like $30,000, right? And then it ends up being like $100,000 price. So you actually want to verify that everything is good yourself. Like, talk to the inspector, go with the inspector, and then verify that contractor has done other big projects and not just like lipstick projects as well.
sure. Yeah, that's a great point. And from what I learned too is, or what I would recommend myself, like I like the great point is like having relationships with people that could help you. But maybe if you're a beginner, I've seen a lot of beginners that work as a lender myself, being in the lending business and we lend to beginners. I've seen beginners that have 9-to-5 jobs. They're doing their first flip, and that's it. They're out of business because they got ripped off from a contractor. So what I would recommend is, and tell me if you agree, is it may be advantageous to partner up with someone experienced through a joint venture, because at the end of the day, you're mitigating your risk, because yes, you're gonna take less of the lion's share of the profits. You're gonna have to give up something, but you're gonna gain experience from that, and that experience that could save you thousands of dollars and time and aggravation. Whereas if you're on your own and you're trying, and a contractor, they're gonna know if you're a beginner or not by the conversation, and then they know they're gonna sense blood. They're gonna try. They'll take advantage if they can.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. And then it's not even just like the thousands of dollars. You could lose your life. That's real estate. You could go into foreclosure, right?
Yeah.
You picked the wrong contractor. Maybe he claimed he pulled permits, ended up being a big job.
Oh yes.
And you got a stop work order, and then on top of that, you need an extra 80,000 because he didn't estimate all the work.
They'll have to tear the whole thing apart again. The inspector come in.
They did the wrong job. You have to tear everything over again, and yeah.
Forget about it. You're done.
So the issue is, I'm going to lose, tens of thousands. You could potentially go into foreclosure because I pick up properties from people who, and I don't know them personally, right? But I see them listing it back on the property with a stop work order or with not being able to finish the project. It happens so often. And anytime I see that, I'm like, damn, like I kind of feel bad. I don't know who he is. Haven't seen the guy, but I feel bad for whoever the owner is because they had this dream of buying their first fix and flip property, and then they're just completely out of luck. And then that might actually most likely end their career. They may not want to do another one after that. So it helps to mitigate your risk either by partnering up with someone or really just like knowing your stuff, which is really hard to do unless you're partner. So for most people, I would say partner with someone else, and then the time that you gain learning, because you'll spend like 6 months at least trying to learn everything, and you'll miss so much. To be honest, you'll still miss so much, and the dangers in missing all that stuff. So unless you have a very, very strong mentor guiding you along, I would definitely look into.
And actually, it's a great point because I've as a lender, I've seen people sit in front of me. They'll tell me stories that they spent a lot of money on education. They'll take out credit card debt for education, and then they're sitting in front of me. How many deals you've done? 0. I'm like, what? Like, meanwhile, the amount of money you spent, you could have done a deal.
Yeah.
And like, as a student myself, a graduate student and a master's in real estate management, I've learned more from experience than I did in grad school. And so basically the point is like you can't buy experience. That's really what I've what I've learned.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And then you can't buy time either. So if you're spending, a few months of trying to learn everything yourself and then potentially lose your head over it, you might as well just go and really, it's a great point. You might as well just go and partner up with someone. If you have that great experienced person, and just be like, hey, look, I'd love to stop by your projects. I would love to kind of be involved in your conversations with your contractors. Maybe if you text them, put me in a group message, right? I just want to learn as much as possible, and I'd love to help you as well. If you could help them, that's really your experience, right? Help them manage XY contract. Look at the contract that they're drafting up. If you can get all of that, you're really like off to a great start because you're not getting a few months of time savings. You're getting a few years of experience if they've been doing it for a few years, or if they've done a couple dozen flips, you've gotten a couple dozen flips of experience, so to speak. Which may take you a few years to do, or a decade even. So it's definitely a great point, which I would recommend to a lot of people.
Okay, so now you let's say going back, you're on your own, right? Which is very it's challenging. Now you have your contractor. What's next now? Now you got to renovate. Now you're renovating this and that. Like, there's more. You're not done yet.
Yeah. So let's say you closed on the property and you're starting the renovation process, and you had a great contract with the late fees, and you had all the scope of work laid out and things like that. Then the devil is really in the detail from there, because managing there's a whole nother life to managing projects. The number one thing that I would recommend is just persistent, nonstop communication with your contractors, meaning you want to contact them every day and just follow up. Hey, what's going on? If you're at the property, visit them. If not, can you FaceTime me? Try to get pictures every day. If you're not visiting, a lot of people are busy. They're not able to visit the project every day. They have a full time.
That could be a huge problem, because if you're not there, they may not be working.
They're most likely not working, actually, because if you're not there, they're not even motivated to show up. They're going to be like, okay, this guy's not checking in on a project, but let me just go work on this other one. He didn't ask me if I went there today. That's the way they're thinking. They're like, oh, it's okay. He didn't even check in on me, right? Which sounds kind of dumb, but to be a really good project manager, it's almost kind of it's not babysitting. It's a negative way to say it. It's just a lot of communication, following up, showing them that, you're checking in to see what's going on. So
You got to keep them honest, basically.
you have to keep them honest, because they'll just disappear, and it happens almost all the time. If you're not following up consistently, they will just start disappearing. So over communication is key, right? So the number one thing is, or mistake is, people be like, I don't want to be annoying. Get that word completely, throw it out of your neuron system. Completely throw it out. Over communication is key. So get pictures from them every single day, or just do a FaceTime at 4 o'clock or before they're leaving or whatever. Hey, what's going on? Checking in, phone call. Are you able to FaceTime right now? Yes or no, etc. So check in with them, and then just to get an update, right? Just having a friendly chat. Be on good terms with them. The worst thing you could do is you start getting tension, because and I've done this mistake before, where I start building tension because I'm getting frustrated. They're not being done on time or whatever. And that tension, now they're like, okay, I'm gonna disappear for 2 weeks because this guy's being a jerk. That's the way they'll perceive it, right? Even though you're not being a jerk. So you want to be on good terms with them. Keep a positive, like, upbeat. I mean, that's what works for me. Keep a positive, upbeat atmosphere. Be like, crack a joke, right? If they're not showing up, hey man, like, you could crack a joke. Be like, I don't want to say passive aggressive, but crack a joke about it, or release some tension, and then just be over communicative. If they're not showing up, say, hey, look, I don't, and you could phrase things to be in a good way, right? Like, hey, you got a bunch of late fees piling up, blah, blah. Like, hey, look, I mean, I don't want you losing a lot of money here, because like the late fees are like starting to show up here. You want to be on their side. So if you phrase it that way, like you're trying to help them out, right? Then you're still keeping that positive atmosphere, but you also remind them, hey, there's late fees, because they might start not taking this year.
And that's a good point, because at the end of the day, like, you have your budget, they have their budget, and the contractor's budget, what is it, like, usually they have like a 20% profit that they want to keep. So you have the over under, they're gonna want to obviously try to stay under, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So follow up with them consistently, and make sure that you are, just to reiterate, it's like really ingrain this in your head, guys. It makes a difference. Really make sure that you're keeping a positive atmosphere, and then being smart with the way you talk to them, even if you have to think about it before you do, because it's easy to get on the phone and just start yelling at the contractor or what have you. Just know that they're more likely to screw you than you can screw them. You can't really screw them over, because they can drive you into foreclosure, right? They could just disappear or take your money or whatever it is, depending on what happened. So you can't really screw them over too much.
Oh, I forgot another thing. I
smaller projects, at least.
Yeah, I just remembered something too. Is making sure they're paying their vendors,
right?
And I don't. It may not be customary in house flipping. It should be, or it should be good practice. Get lien waivers, because God forbid a vendor is not paid, they could slap a mechanic lien on your project, and now it's a problem, because they'll stall your whole project, and you pretty much they're in trouble.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've done a lot of my projects with day labor crews and things like that, so I didn't have to worry about lien waivers. But if you're working with that contractor, make sure you're getting a good lien waiver, because if you're doing like $100,000 project and they get mad at you and you get on bad terms, why it's important to be on good terms. You get on bad terms with them, they may be a little petty. And
because a lot of times, like, too, is like, let's say when you're dealing with a lender, for example, and I'm just talking as a lender standpoint, you want to have good controls of invoices and paid receipts, right? Because when you want to get a draw request, let's say you're taking out a hard money loan or a private loan, and you submit a requisition request to get reimbursed, because typically the way it works is the borrower puts the money out first, then they get reimbursed dollar for dollar. Now, if you can't show proof that things were paid, you may not get 100% of your reimbursement. They may give you less, because you don't have proof. So make sure you're very organized and keep track of the invoices, and make sure that you have the paid that you have the proof of payment, right? And so
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't hurt too, in case like, you know, for one reason or another, the tax office wants to verify that you spent, X amount on your rehab. You're like, okay, you already have it already. So that's definitely a good point.
yeah.
So yeah, with the contractor, so you're renovating a project. You've done all of these things that I've told you about to make sure that the project's going smooth, but for one reason or another, they still end up not being acting in good faith. Well, if you're in front of the money, right, and you have all the bids lined up, just let them go as fast as possible, right? Because what tends to happen is they'll say, "Hey, look, oh, I overpaid them by a couple of thousand or whatever, or I don't want to wait for another contractor." Maybe they'll be done in another couple of months, right? But if you're seeing like really bad behavior, more chances than not, they're going to continue it. So you want to have an option to kind of just like back out quickly and then just bring another person. And it'll be like no harm, no foul. So that's one like common mistake where people will be like, oh, okay, I got this one person and I don't want to lose a couple of thousand, but they literally lose more than a couple of thousand because they drag the project on for like 4 or 5 months or so.
Because you have carrying cost. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that's hard. You have to try, and a good rule of thumb is like you want to figure out what is your cost per day on the project, and because every day is money that you're burning basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It adds up pretty quickly. Yeah, so these are a few things about contractors, and then once you're done with the projects, let's say everything goes smoothly, then you're just putting the property on the market, and the seller is going to request a bunch of things to be repaired if you didn't pay close attention to the inspection report and try to remedy all of these things, right? So that's another thing. When you get the inspection report, what you want to do is hand it to your contractor, right? If they know what they're doing, be like, okay, address all of these. What you want to address is plumbing, electrical, and structural. I made this mistake on my second flip where I didn't address these plumbing, electrical, and structure. Oh, there's no structural, plumbing, and electrical, because I said they're fine, and they may be fine, right? But this, from the eyes of the seller, they're going to be scared away from the house, and they also may not be fine. So you would have to address them anyway. So might as well like address them and then just make sure that everything is good to go. Because what happens is there are a few things that kill deals, and they're electrical, plumbing, and structurals, right? Obviously oil tank as well. So if you have what you believe are minor electrical and plumbing issues, I'll get them addressed anyways, because they're going to ask either for a large amount. So let's say they want $15,000 in credit, or they may say, no, we're gonna cancel the deal. So had this happen in my second flip where I didn't know better. First deal got canceled. I think it was from that issue. Second deal, I think we repaired some things, but not some other things, and they also left from there. Right. So
That's basically your punch list before you have basically you get your inspection done. The buyer's going to order an inspection, then you get that inspection report, and now you basically you have your punch list put together for your contractor to finish up the job. So then the buyer's happy, and you ultimately get it sold.
yeah, exactly. And then more likely than not, when you're selling the property, there will still be other things. So you'll have a different inspector. There'll still be other things. You're going to have to either renovate some things or just kind of give a small credit to the buyer at that point.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's great. That's really thank you. That was great. Anything else? I'm trying to think of anything else we missed on. I mean, that's pretty I believe soup to nuts on a very high level view. Obviously, there's a lot more moving parts to it. Any other tips and tricks of resources that you recommend on analyzing it, like finding deals, analyzing? You said you put together a spreadsheet. Way to connect with other investors because you're right. There's Facebook groups where a plethora of investors or wannabe investors. There's a lot of different characters in there, but that's a whole other story that you got to be careful of. I've heard of horror stories from people from Facebook too. So anything else?
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, well, one, you basically just got like a clear outline of your very first fix and flip. Um, so if you can find a mentor, right, get one. If not, like a strong mentor is really hard to find, to be honest with you, on your first fix and flip. If not, partner with someone, and then just make sure you have a great team around you. You have an agent that's done fix and flips before. You have a good attorney that can show you a lot of the pitfalls to avoid. And then make sure you're giving yourself like plenty of time to find a fix and flip, and then you're honest with yourself with how long it's going to take to find a great fix and flip, because it will take a few months. So, don't quit your job right now per se, if you have a job at the moment. But I would say, with all the pitfalls that we just told you about, right? Real estate is really like an amazing, amazing vehicle. And it's one of the things, it's said often, I don't know if it's true, it creates the most millionaires. And I think it's been true. I think statistically wise, it's been definitely true. And it can provide you a lot of freedom. So I hope we didn't like scare you away by saying all these pitfalls, but it's really, really well worth it. Just make sure you're going in it at the right way. And then, you could find yourself where you could go on a few more vacations, or you could retire early, be financially free. These things are not that uncommon. They happen with a lot of people, and it's not easy, but it may also be easier than you think if you've been putting it off for a while. Just be persistent, putting in a ton of work, and don't give up, because it's very easy to give up after your first or second project that didn't go well. So all I can say is just, word of hope, if you're going through your first fix and flip that maybe didn't work out too well, or what have you, don't give up, but just learn and improve, right? Learn and improve, and then just make some adjustments. Why did I make some mistakes on the first project? Why did it take longer? How can I circumvent these issues? Okay, well, maybe I don't know as much as I know. Let me partner up with someone, or X, Y, Z. And then if you keep at it, if you keep at it long enough, right, you may be like frustrated maybe you're not going as fast as you can. Not necessarily that you're doing bad or you're not going as fast as you can. Just know that if you keep persistent, you'll succeed eventually, no matter what. That's just how real estate is, and you'll succeed way more than you thought possible.
Excellent points. Now, in terms of partnering, do you take on beginners as partners? And I guess what they call earn and learn or something.
No, I haven't. I did do a couple with partners, and what ended up happening is they basically, I think one of them was interested in learning and things like that, and they learned some things, but they weren't like, oh, let me learn everything, right? They're just kind of busy with what they're doing and things like that. So I haven't taken on someone of that nature before, but I've definitely partnered with people before.
And would you consider now on future projects if someone approached you that wanted to learn, or someone referred you a beginner? For good reason being is because for me as a lender, we're beginner friendly. My goal is to help these investors and groom them to become experienced investors. And my goal is to build out a network of experienced flippers, rehabbers. The different names for the same strategy, right? You can also call it value add, but let's keep it simple: flipping houses, right? So my goal is to say, hey, Mr. So and so, number one, you want to find a good lender, right? That's there's a million lenders out there, and so you want to find a good lender. And my goal is to be able to say, hey, I have someone that's experienced, like Joseph or someone else, and partner with them, right? And so are you open to partnerships if someone referred or if someone just reached out to you?
Yes, that's a good question. I think if someone's finding the deal, they have it under contract, and it's a good deal, I would be open to partnership. It's not like if I'm finding the deal and I'm getting, the house under contract and all that stuff, I wouldn't go out and be like, hey, you can partner with me because I have have too much availability to capital. But if someone's getting a deal on their contract and it's a good deal and I can kind of guide them along, I would be open to that for sure.
Yeah, there's also I know there's times where you may have someone that they have liquidity, no experience, and then they joint venture, meaning there's two parties. They both bring value to the table. One could bring money, the other one could bring the experience, the trade, if you will. If someone's like, hey, I have money, I want to invest, but I don't want to be passive. I want to be active and learn. Are you open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that if they want to invest and they would love to learn, I'd absolutely be open to doing that. And then I'd welcome it too. So another thing that I would say is, not to pivot a little bit, is like if you end up getting into multifamily investing later too, it's all about partnerships. So we have plenty of partners set up and for commercial real estate, building partner, multifamily partner for existing value add, and I'm always open to other parts. If someone's watching this, they're not in residential, they're more on the multifamily side. I'm always looking forward to and open to new partnerships there in any way.
Yeah, I'm all for partnerships. I probably will give have another discussion on another episode of partnerships that have gone wrong and what I've learned from that. But hey, look, at the end of the day, like I said, you can't buy experience and you want to learn. And that's you're gonna end up in bad partnerships. It happens, you learn. So that's a whole other subject because I could go into that another day. But anything else? How can they find you if they want to contact you?
Absolutely. So you could find me on Instagram, Invest with Joe Sparta. You could find me on Facebook as well. It might be a little bit harder to find, Joe Sparta. And then you could also reach out to me via email at joe@Spartan with an N investments plural.info. And then you could also find the email and my website as well, which is www.spartancapitalinvestments.com.
Excellent. So anyway, I really hope everybody found value in this show. Please like, subscribe, share, smash that like button, and let us know any other questions that you have or topics that you would like us to discuss. And until then, happy investing, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam, for having me here. I had a lot of fun.